I never really thought about just how many different types of commercial vehicles are out there, let alone what it takes to drive them.
Right.
We're talking everything from those massive 18-wheelers to school buses and tankers carrying who knows what.
Yeah, it's a whole other world out there.
And it turns out it's not as simple as just getting a CDL.
Oh, absolutely not.
Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of CDL endorsements to uncover what it really takes to get behind the wheel of these specialized vehicles.
It's a jungle out there. No, but
Mhm.
seriously, it's easy to think of a CDL as a one-size-fits-all license, but the reality is
Way more complicated.
exactly much more nuanced. Depending on the type of vehicle you want to drive and the cargo you plan to haul, you need specific endorsements that demonstrate your knowledge and skills.
Okay, so let's break this down. I know our sources dive into several key endorsements, things like H for hazardous material,
Right, right.
N for tank vehicles, S for school buses, and even T for those double and triple trailers you see on the highway.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Where should we even start with all this?
Well, a good place to begin might be with a quick overview of the different CDL classes, since those lay the foundation for understanding endorsements.
Okay, sounds good.
You've got your Class A CDLs, which cover those heavy-duty rigs you mentioned, the ones pulling trailers weighing over 10,000 pounds.
Got it.
Then there's Class B, designed for single vehicles weighing over 26,000 pounds, like box trucks or city buses.
Okay, so bigger trucks, but not the ones with the big trailers.
You got it. And finally, you have Class C for smaller vehicles carrying specific cargo or more than 16 passengers.
Right, so the class of CDL you have dictates the general type of vehicle you can drive,
Exactly.
but then the endorsements come into play to specify the qualifications for specialized situations, correct?
Exactly. Think of endorsements like adding specific tools to a
I
toolbox.
like that.
You might have a basic set of tools, but for certain jobs, you need specialized equipment.
Makes sense.
The same goes for CDLs.
That's a great analogy. So someone who wants to transport hazardous materials, for example, would need the H endorsement on top of their base CDL.
Exactly, you got it.
What's involved in getting that particular endorsement?
Well, our source material highlights just how seriously the authorities take the transportation of hazardous materials. It's not just about passing a knowledge test, although that is a requirement.
Right.
You also undergo a TSA security threat assessment, including background checks and fingerprinting, all thanks to the Patriot Act.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty rigorous process.
Wow, I had no idea it was that intense. They're definitely not messing around with hazmat.
Nope.
Okay, so that's HE for hazardous materials. What about something like the N endorsement for tank vehicles? That seems like it could be surprisingly complex, too.
You are correct. It's not as simple as just driving any vehicle with a tank attached. The N endorsement specifically applies when you're hauling a lot of liquid. We're talking a single tank with a capacity over 1,000 gallons or multiple tanks with a combined capacity exceeding that amount.
So it's not about just having any tank. It's about the sheer volume you're carrying. Why does the volume matter so much with tankers?
It all boils down to safety and physics. The more liquid you're transporting, the greater the risk if something goes wrong.
Sure.
Larger volumes impact things like braking distance and vehicle stability, especially if the liquid shifts during transit.
Oh, right, of course.
Imagine that much liquid sloshing around it creates a dangerous pendulum effect that can be difficult to control, increasing the chance of rollovers.
That's a great point. I never considered the physics involved. It makes sense that transporting such large volumes of liquid requires specialized knowledge and skills. Speaking of specialized knowledge, what about the S endorsement for school buses? What are some of the key things our listeners should know about that?
Absolutely.
Now, transporting a bus full of kids is a huge responsibility. Talk about precious cargo.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not just about driving, it's about ensuring those kids get on and off the bus safely every day.
You're absolutely right. The S endorsement is about much more than just navigating a big vehicle. It requires a deep understanding of safety protocols specific to school children.
So it's not just about flashing red lights and stop signs. What else does the S endorsement entail?
Well, for starters, think about the unique challenges of handling a bus full of, let's say, energetic elementary school students.
Oh, yeah.
You need patience, clear communication skills, and the ability to manage a sometimes chaotic environment, all while maintaining complete control of the vehicle.
It's like being a teacher, a driver, and a babysitter, all rolled into one. Our source material mentions something about a specific type of road test for the S endorsement.
Exactly. To obtain the S endorsement, you need to prove your skills in an actual school bus.
What?
And not just any school bus. It has to be one equipped with all the safety features. Flashing red lights, that iconic stop sign arm that extends out, even those crisscrossing seatbelts we see more and more of these days.
That makes a lot of sense. They want to be sure you can handle the real deal. Now, we've talked about H for hazardous materials, N for tankers, and S for school buses, all very different areas of specialization. But what about those monster double and triple trailers you see hauling freight across the country?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like a whole other level of skill.
Absolutely. Obtaining the T endorsement for those double or triple trailers requires a whole other level of expertise. Imagine the precision needed to maneuver those massive rigs, especially when navigating tight turns or changing lanes.
I can barely reverse my car with a small trailer attached.
What are some of the specific challenges that come with driving those multi-trailer combinations?
One major factor is something called off-tracking.
Off tracking, okay. Imagine you're driving a regular semi-trailer truck and you make a right turn. The trailer follows a tighter path than the truck itself,
Right?
right? That's off tracking. Now, with doubles and triples, you've got multiple trailers, each off tracking to a different degree. It's like trying to get a whole marching band to turn a corner without bumping into each other.
Wow, I never even considered that.
Yeah,
So drivers need to be incredibly aware of how each trailer is going to respond, especially in those situations.
precisely. And then there's the swing out to worry about.
Oh, right.
As you turn, the rear trailers swing out wider than the tractor, potentially clipping curbs or even other vehicles if you're not careful.
Wow.
It takes a lot of practice and spatial awareness to handle those maneuvers safely.
It sounds like obtaining the T endorsement requires nerves of steel and some serious driving skills. Now, I know we've touched on a few endorsements already, but our sources dive into even more specialized areas. For example, what about transporting passengers in a vehicle that isn't a school bus, like a city bus or tour bus?
That's where the P endorsement or passenger endorsement comes in. This one focuses on the safe transportation of passengers, ensuring you understand things like proper loading and unloading procedures, emergency exits, and passenger management.
It makes sense that you'd need specific training for that, especially when you're responsible for the safety of dozens of passengers at a time. Now, I'm curious, are there any common misconceptions about CDL endorsements we should clear up for our listener?
One big one is that once you have a CDL endorsement, it's good for life.
Right.
But, we saw earlier with the H endorsement that there are often renewals and recertifications involved.
Right, because safety regulations are constantly evolving, especially when you're talking about hazardous materials. It makes sense that drivers need to stay up to date on the latest procedures and protocols. Are there any other misconceptions out there?
Another one that trips people up is assuming any CDL allows you to drive any commercial vehicle.
Yeah.
But remember those restrictions we talked about earlier, they play a crucial role in specifying the limitations of your license.
Right. We briefly mentioned restriction code L for air brakes,
Yeah.
but our source material lists a whole bunch of others like EK and more. I have to admit, before this deep dive, I had no idea those restrictions even existed.
Yeah, they're easy to overlook, but incredibly important. For instance, let's say you get your CDL and are all excited to hit the open road in a big rig, only to find out you have restriction code E.
Oh no, what does that one mean?
Restriction code E means you're restricted to vehicles without a manual transmission.
Oh, okay.
In other words, no shifting gears for you. You need an automatic.
Wow.
Imagine getting behind the wheel of that big rig only to realize you can't drive stick shift.
That would be a pretty embarrassing start to your trucking career. So it's essential to understand those restrictions before you even think about getting behind the wheel of a specific vehicle.
What about restriction code K? That one sounded intriguing.
Restriction code K is all about location, location, location.
If you have this restriction on your CDL, you can only operate your commercial vehicle within your home state. No crossing state lines for you.
So someone with that restriction would need to be perfectly content with sticking to a more regional route.
Exactly.
It definitely highlights how each endorsement and restriction adds a layer of specialization to the CDL world.
Right.
It's not just about driving, it's about understanding the specific rules and requirements that govern each area of expertise.
Precisely. And that's why it's so crucial to consult those official regulations and resources. What might seem like a minor detail could make all the difference in operating safely and legally.
Couldn't agree more. So for our listener who's been on this journey with us today, We've explored the ins and outs of CDL endorsements, from handling hazardous materials to navigating the unique challenges of school buses and even those impressive double and triple trailers.
And we can't forget the ELDT mandate, which underscores the commitment to training and preparedness required of anyone entering this profession.
Absolutely. Obtaining a CDL and the necessary endorsements is a serious undertaking, demanding comprehensive knowledge, specialized skills, and a deep understanding of safety regulations. It's not just about driving, it's about safeguarding yourself, your cargo, and everyone else on the road. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of CDL endorsements. Until next time, keep those wheels turning and remember, stay curious.